Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. The FDA has authorized booster shots of Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines for people with compromised immune systems. Now, an advisory panel is set to offer its guidance to the CDC, which is expected to recommend the shots be distributed to specific groups like those who've had organ transplants or cancer. The U.S. is reporting more than 130,000 new COVID cases, the highest single-day total since January. Mississippi's hospital system is already overwhelmed, forced to turn this garage into a field hospital for COVID patients. A tropical storm warning has been issued for the Florida Keys as Fred brings heavy rain to the northern Caribbean. The tropical depression is expected to strengthen into a tropical storm later today before hitting South Florida with gusty winds and heavy rain tonight and into the morning. But we start with Afghanistan, where the Taliban seized the country's second-largest city of Kandahar overnight. Militants have taken control of 15 provincial capitals in just the past week, and they're closing in on the country's capital of Kabul. Now the Biden administration is sending more troops in to get Americans out, just 2.5 weeks before the scheduled withdrawal of all U.S. troops. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest. Hi, Ian.
Diane, the collapse of large parts of Afghanistan has been bewildering, but this U.S. emergency evacuation is going to be seen by many as a stunning admission of failure and a signal for anyone in Afghanistan who can get out to do so now. This morning, Afghanistan reeling as around 3,000 U.S. troops set to deploy back into Afghanistan to help an emergency evacuation of some embassy staff and others out of Kabul as the Taliban's grip around the country tightens. With up to 3,500 troops to be stationed in Kuwait on standby, officials refusing to call the deployment a combat mission or an evacuation.
Our job here now with this additional plus-up is to help facilitate the safe movement of civilian personnel out of Afghanistan.
This as the Taliban take key southern strongholds overnight. The country's second-largest city of Kandahar fell after heavy fighting, the government releasing video of some of the clashes. And the key southern city of Lashkargah was toppled this morning. In just 1 week, they've taken at least 15 provincial capitals, including most of its major cities. This video, released by the Taliban, purport to show their forces taking key strategic sites. One shows fighters at police headquarters in Herat, the country's third-largest city. The group also overtaking Ghazni, a key location on the road to Kabul. Most Afghan forces being overrun, either surrendering or defecting. Some fear the Taliban could take the country's capital in just weeks, possibly by the 20th anniversary of the September the 11th terrorist attacks.
Who would have possibly thought that 20 years on, this is where we would be ending up.
In greatest fear are those who stand to lose the most, the women of Afghanistan, a generation of girls who grew up with access to education and rights, now fearful the Taliban will once again take all of that away.
They know that everything that they know and they have gained with lots of blood and sweat and tears is at the verge of shattering should the Taliban come back to power.
Diane, there's now a climate of fear and dread in Afghanistan, and I want to share this message sent to one of our colleagues from an Afghan who worked as an interpreter for U.S. Special Forces. He wrote this yesterday, saying, "Cities are falling one by one. Kabul is next. If they don't evacuate us, there'll be a slaughter. I have no idea what to do. I need help to leave the country, or I will die." Diane?
Sad words there. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell, thank you. And let's bring in ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez for more on this. Louis, any chance the U.S. reverses this plan for all of the troops to withdraw by the end of August, given how quickly the Taliban is advancing right now?
Diane, we have not heard that that is in the works at all. If anything, the Pentagon is backing fully the president's order that all U.S. troops will withdraw from Afghanistan by the end of August. That was amended to, earlier it had been September 11th. Now, then it was changed to the end of August. The irony here is that as we took out most of those 2,500 troops very, very quickly in the month of June and early July, now we're rushing back 3,000 troops straight into Kabul to protect and defend that airport just so that we can evacuate these American diplomats. Not all of them. They're leaving behind a core group at the embassy, but a significant number. And then as well, the tens of thousands of Afghan interpreters who worked with the U.S. military over the last 2 decades, along with their families. But as far as I can hear, there are no plans in the works right now, unless the president reverses himself. But as of last night, I had not heard of anything in the works in terms of reversing the decision to pull them out and to keep them there.
Now, the Pentagon is not calling this an evacuation, saying it's a drawdown of most staff at the Kabul embassy. They're also not calling this a combat mission. What do you take with the language that's being used to describe this mission and not describe this mission?
Well, there's a reason they're using that language, is because they want to be careful. They want to play the semantics here because the language of not describing this as a combat mission is accurate in a sense, but the fact is that these are troops that are going in there with body armor. They're going in there with their weapons. They're going in there with the right of self-defense, and they're going into an area that could very well soon be a hostile environment, which would lead to combat. They're not calling it an evacuation formally, because when I asked that question of John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, yesterday directly, he said it's not an evacuation procedure, what they call here at the Pentagon a NEO, essentially because he said that we're not evacuating American civilians. Well, you are not evacuating American civilians. There aren't that many of them inside Kabul right now, but what you are evacuating is a significant number of the diplomatic personnel who worked at the U.S. Embassy, along with contractors, along with security personnel who also worked there. Playing a little games here, but the intent here is not to raise concerns, but I think you have to call it what it is.
And Louis, there's clearly a lot of anger and heartbreak among people in Afghanistan who in many cases feel abandoned by the Americans, as Ian has described with a lot of his reporting there. President Biden is receiving a lot of criticism here at home also for this decision. What is the alternative, though? Keeping troops there indefinitely? Walk us through what the options were for the president and what they are at this point.
Well, this was the option that President Biden inherited from President Trump, because about a year and a half ago, President Trump negotiated a deal with the Taliban where they would refrain from attacking U.S. forces for the year, and then after that, the U.S. would withdraw. That deadline was May 1st. President Biden adhered to that decision-making agreement, but what he said was, I'm going to delay the withdrawal of American troops. He said that the war in Afghanistan, the war against al-Qaeda, was over as far as he was concerned, because that had happened a long time ago. This is the conundrum when it comes to Afghanistan. Are you there to prevent a terrorism strike against the United States? Are you there to do that as well as help build a strong democracy, build modern institutions which are now at risk, or do you just engage in a full-on military battle? Those are the options that I think President Biden had to consider, and he determined that the war against al-Qaeda was over, and that if al-Qaeda did come back, that they could be contained with a counterterrorism strike from other areas where the U.S. could strike that. But I think the situation now is we've moved beyond that. Now you have to say, does the U.S. reassess? Again, I have not heard anything to that effect. And as we heard earlier this week when Stephanie Ramos asked President Biden if he regretted his decision, he said he had no regrets.
And we heard from President Biden as recently as July saying that the likelihood that the Taliban is going to take over the entire country is highly unlikely. How likely does that look now, Louis?
Well, Diana, I've got to tell you that what the president was citing was probably internal intelligence. We had heard that there was an internal intelligence assessment that said that maybe 6 to 12 months is how long the Afghan government could hold out after a full U.S. withdrawal. That is, if the Taliban went full on. We now know that the Taliban went full force against the Afghan government and the military over the last 2 weeks, and that time frame obviously decelerated. Now, what we did see earlier this week was an assessment from U.S. military assessment that maybe within 1 to 2 months, Kabul might be feeling pressure, might be isolated. In 90 days, it could fall. We're looking at a much faster timeline right now if it continues on as it has this week.
All right. Louis Martinez from the Pentagon. We appreciate it, Louis. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the FDA is authorizing booster shots for immunocompromised people. Now a CDC panel is meeting today to make its final recommendation as hospitals around the country reach their breaking point. Elwin Lopez is in Jackson, Mississippi, where they're converting a parking garage into a field hospital.
Overnight, a major step from the FDA, authorizing booster shots for immunocompromised people. A third shot authorized for Pfizer and Moderna for added immunity. The FDA saying other fully vaccinated individuals are adequately protected. Now, a CDC advisory panel set to meet this morning and make their recommendation to Director Walensky, who has the power to greenlight the shots. Walensky saying this first go-ahead would apply to a specific group of immunocompromised people, like those who have had organ transplants or cancer.
This is a very small population. We estimate it to be less than 3% of adults.
Questions now growing about when those shots could roll out for the rest of the country, as the U.S. is seeing more than 130,000 new cases, the highest single-day total since January. Nearly 80,000 Americans now hospitalized. Mississippi's hospital system on the brink of collapse, forced to turn this garage into a field hospital for COVID patients.
It's normally something that you only see in disaster war zones.
I feel like we're beyond a disaster. You know, when we're setting up a hospital in a garage.
This as the crisis spreads across the South. Florida and Texas now accounting for nearly 40% of the country's new hospitalizations. North Texas out of pediatric ICU beds. Across the country, doctors sounding the alarm as more children, like 12-year-old Brody Barnett, are landing in the hospital with the virus.
Seeing all these kids on ventilators walking down the hallway, it's pretty scary. It ain't nothing to joke with.
And hospital officials tell me there's already a waiting list for patients from other hospitals to come here. The first ones are expected this morning. Diane?
Elwin Lopez, thanks for that. And as the CDC panel meets right now to make its final recommendation on booster shots, cases across the country have hit the highest one-day total since January. Chief Innovation Officer at Boston Children's Hospital and ABC News medical contributor Dr. John Brownstein is here with more on this. Dr. Brownstein, thanks so much for being here. What happens if the CDC panel today recommends booster shots for certain groups? Who's likely to get it, and when then would those shots become available? I think you're on mute, maybe, Dr. Brownstein? Let's see if we can.
I was muted.
I'm sorry. There we go.
That's the first time.
I'm kind of shocked it hasn't happened before, to be honest. Dr. Brownstein is a first. We all end up stuck on mute at some point. So walk us through this. Who is going to get these booster shots, or is likely to get these booster shots, based on CDC recommendations, and how long before they start becoming available?
Right. So this is good news. You know, the CDC is meeting right now to have this discussion, and I expect the CDC director to sign off on it later today. The CDC right now, with that FDA approval, is looking now to formulate guidance for doctors and patients. And the idea is that this will be specifically targeted for immunocompromised Americans. They will be able to get that third shot. I know we talk about it as a booster, but really what we're saying is a third shot for those that really can't mount an effective response. This includes cancer patients, transplant recipients, people with HIV, people on immunosuppressant drugs. So this is a large group of people, but it's not a massive segment of the population, but 3% that would fall into that category. And why we're specifically concerned about this group is that these are the groups that really are generating the most amount of breakthrough infections and the most amount of hospitalizations and deaths. So we want to figure out ways to protect that group. So this is a really important decision, because that third shot we've seen from CDC data will mount that effective immune response up to 50%. So, of course, this will be important for those individuals to mount that response. This is not going to be a broad sort of general booster shot that we still don't know what will happen with.
And so what about more general booster shots for the rest of the country? Do you see that happening? And if so, when?
Yeah, so we're still nowhere near that. The FDA reiterated the fact that we're probably not going to be there for a while. You know, the idea is that the current data shows that if you have a functioning immune system, you can mount an effective response to COVID, and that will last over time. We're seeing that at least 6 to 8 months, if not longer. And we expect that for severe illness and death, that immunity to last a really long time. So our expectation is the general public is not going to be in line for a booster anytime soon. Of course, we have to look at more data. There are studies happening in the US and internationally that are looking at two factors. One is immunity waning over time, and is the Delta variant chipping away at that immunity? We have seen some studies that the Delta variant does chip away at that vaccine efficacy, but not in a huge way, and especially not for what matters in terms of severe illness and death. And so we just have to crucially keep messaging that these vaccines work, and we don't have to be concerned about breakthrough cases if you're not in that immunocompromised category.
Now, hospitals in some Delta hotspots are already overwhelmed, but officials are predicting up to 4 times more daily hospitalizations by Labor Day. So how is that going to work?
It's really scary, I have to say, because if you're looking at the data right now, we're up 25% from last week, 110,000 daily cases. Hospitalizations on the rise, especially in low vaccinated areas. We're over 75,000 already. So what happens now going forward? We have states that are comprising the majority of cases like Florida, like Texas, and they're going to have a really challenging next month. We're seeing hospitals on the verge of collapse. We're seeing field hospitals. And on top of that, we're having shortages of staff. So I'm very concerned about COVID patients, but I'm also very concerned about patients that need care that may not be able to get it because unvaccinated people are essentially filling up the hospital. So, of course, this is not going to be countrywide. There are many parts of this country that have done very well with the vaccine that won't see these surges. But of course, we're going to have to be highly focused on these places that are under-vaccinated and experiencing these massive collapses of our healthcare systems.
All right. And what do you think, Dr. Brownstein? Is it too late to vaccinate our way out of this in the short term right now?
Well, it's going to have to be a combination. Yes, in the short term, vaccines to take effect, they'll take weeks to take effect. But of course, if you're on the fence, you've got to do it because we are looking at a fall surge. But in the meantime, while I don't expect lockdowns to take place, we're going to have to do more. We're going to have to be improving our masking, social distancing, potentially removing indoor gatherings. We have to bring those non-pharmaceutical interventions into play if we're going to be able to ramp down this new surge, which is really very worrisome right now.
All right, Dr. John Brownstein, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Coming up, a dream come true. Major League Baseball made history last night with a blast from the past, complete with a Hollywood ending. We'll be right back. Welcome back. That's a live look at Capitol Hill, where the halls are mostly empty this morning as Congress is out for the August recess. But the stands were far from empty last night in Dyersville, Iowa. Major League Baseball built it, and sure enough, the fans came to the so-called Field of Dreams, smack in the middle of a cornfield. Last night's first game paid tribute to the classic Kevin Costner film with the Yankees and White Sox emerging from the outfield just like the ghosts of players past. ABC's Will Gans has the details.
If you build it, he will come.
They built it, and sure enough, Kevin Costner and the MLB paying homage to Field of Dreams. The Yankees and the White Sox playing a game in the cornfields of Dyersville, Iowa.
30 years ago, on the other side of that corn, we filmed a movie that stood the test of time. Tonight, thanks to that enduring impact that little movie had, it's allowed us to come here again.
The MLB leaning heavily into the nostalgia of the 1989 Oscar-nominated film.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
Even the uniforms of both teams paying tribute to years gone by. The stadium only able to seat 8,000 fans. TickPick says Thursday's Field of Dreams game is the most expensive regular season MLB game ever. The average ticket going for $1,413. But once inside, hungry fans able to help themselves to a taste of Iowa, including cheese curds, deep-fried Oreos, and the Field of Dreams nachos topped with pulled pork. No nachos on the field, but the White Sox, Tim Anderson serving up a walk-off homer in the 9th inning, securing a 9-8 win for Chicago.
Hey, is this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
If you build it, they will come. Will Gans, thank you. Coming up, the unbreakable bond between 3 pregnant women who share a very unusual connection. Their Feel Good Friday story when we return. Welcome back. It's time for Feel Good Friday, where we bring you a little good news headed into the weekend. And today it's all about 3 cousins that share an unbreakable bond. Melody Stubbs, Courtney Harper, and Janicia Wilson are all pregnant with twins and all due in October. Now the trio does almost everything together, and they even have the same doctor. And Melody, Courtney, and Janicia are actually here today to join us for their Feel Good Friday story. Ladies, you're even wearing the same color shirt. I love it. Huge congratulations to you all, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
So I know you said that the first question that people ask you is if twins run in your family, and the answer is actually no. So Courtney, why don't you start us off? How surprised were you when you found out that all 3 of you were expecting twins?
Ecstatic, shocked, all the above. Still can't believe it.
And Janicia, what's it been like to have each other to share this experience with? How often do you call each other and say, hey, this is happening, that's happening? No way, me too. Walk us through what this has been like for you and what kind of things you've done together.
It's an experience. It's like we get to experience moments together. We get to figure out what each other go through being pregnant with twins, because it's kind of unusual for us. So most of the time we're in this twin mom group. If we want to know anything different, we go and look to see what everybody else is experiencing. But it's exciting, that we all get to experience the same thing.
And Melody, I know you 3 share another much more sad connection in that your pregnancies all come after you all also experienced miscarriage. So what was it like to go from experiencing that together to being where you are now?
I mean, the situation is bittersweet, but we actually have each other, so it makes a big difference for us all.
Courtney, what do you think you've learned from each other? And what's your advice to other expecting moms out there who maybe feel alone?
There's always someone to talk to. If not family or friends, Facebook. Facebook has a lot of supportive groups. And I've learned, women should stick together. Come together. It's important.
And Melody, what are you most looking forward to once the babies are born?
Sleepless nights.
You know what, though? Most moms, Janicia, most moms have their sleepless nights and they're stuck by themselves dealing with it, or every now and then waking their husbands for a little company. At least the 3 of you guys get to call each other, right?
We do.
Well, listen, ladies, a huge congratulations to you all. It's lovely to see you all smiling and doing well, and wishing you all the best of luck. Janicia, I know this is your first time having kids. You're going to become a first-time mom, too, so a special congratulations to you, and good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you can find more feel-good stories at GoodMorningAmerica.com. That does it for this newscast. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.